What's going on, lads and lasses? Welcome back to 100% Marks. It's that time of year again where I predict my Premier League table for the brand new season, 25-26 season. And of course, as always, we'll go from 20th all the way up to who I think will win this year's Premier League, and also give you my thoughts on a few of the teams on why I am picking them for that area as well. So without further ado, let's get into it. So starting off at number 20, we have to go with, of course, Sunderland here. I mean, the Mackhams haven't done that bad in the window. They've signed quite a few players, but it's all players nobody knows, bar the likes of Granit Xhaka, Simon Adringa. You know, it's basically just all players nobody even knows who they are, and quite a lot of African players as well. So they're going to be, you know, really hit hard when it comes to that African Cup of Nations in December. They're going to have a lot of players going away, probably about, say, 7 maybe out of their signings, of the 9 that they've brought in, will probably be going away at the African Cup of Nations. That's a lot of players that, of course, will not be able to play for them during that time period. So that is going to affect them massively. And that is why, of course, I am putting them down in 20th place. Not because they were rivals, not because of anything like that. I am trying to be as neutral as possible on these predictions. And the pure reason to why I picked them 20th is for the fact that, you know, they've signed a lot of players that nobody knows, a lot of players that are African nations players as well, so they're going to lose them, like I said, in December. And they have been out of the Premier League as well for a long time, and the Premier League has changed a lot since Sunderland were in, of course, the Premier League. But moving on to number 19th on the list, and I am going to go with Leeds United here, another one of the newly promoted teams into the Premier League. I mean, I really don't see anything where Leeds would be really good, to be honest, looking at what they've brought in. Other than Sean Longstaff, you know, there's not really many huge names there. There's a lad, of course, Lucas Nimicha from Wolfsburg. He may be very good, but I haven't really, you know, seen much of him myself. He came in on a free. Anton Stach from Hoffenheim, 17.4 million Leeds have paid for him. So maybe he may be a good player as well. I haven't really seen much of him, to be honest, so I won't be able to make my judgment until I see, you know, what these players are like in the Premier League. But I'm choosing Leeds 19th to go down. And, you know, like I always say when I do these videos, this is all for a bit of fun. So Leeds and Sunderland fans, you know, don't take it so serious at the end of the day. You know, this is just for fun, and of course doesn't necessarily mean that this is where you're actually going to finish in the league table. But moving on to 18th place, and I've got to go with, of course, Brentford here. Unfortunately, Brentford have had a lot of players, of course, leave them this season. They've had their manager, of course, leave them this season as well. And the players that they've brought in, you know, they've brought in Callagher from Liverpool for 18 million. They've brought in Jordan Henderson on a free, you know, and then they've brought in a few other players as well. But, I mean, losing Brian Mbeumo, losing Norgard, losing Flecken, you know, losing Ben Mee, also losing the manager, you know, Thomas Frank, and then they could possibly, before the season kicks off as well, lose Johan Wissa, as he's being linked to, you know, my team, Newcastle United. So it's not looking good for Brentford, and that is why I think this could be maybe the season we'll see Brentford leave the Premier League, but not, you know, by drastic measures, just getting relegated in 18th place. That is where I'm going to put Brentford for this season. Moving on to 17th place, and this is where we look at West Ham now. Graham Potter, of course, in at West Ham now. They've got their signings so far this window, of course, before the season kicks off, is Diouf from Slava Prague. They paid 19 million for him. Todibo from Nice, 35 million for him. Of course, Kyle Walker-Peters on a free from Southampton as well. Callum Wilson on a free from ourselves to be the striker up top for West Ham. And the players that they've gotten rid of, going into this season, we've seen the likes of Antonio leaving, Mikel Antonio leaving. We've seen Danny Ings leaving, Kurt Zuma leaving, Kufal, Cresswell. These are big players for West Ham, and they've left the club either on a free or for fees. Mohamed Kudus was a really good standout player for West Ham last season. We've seen him go to Tottenham for 55 million. So it is looking a little bit on the bleak side for West Ham fans going into this season, but I don't think it's going to be enough to see them get relegated, but maybe see them around that relegation battling zone, and that is why I am going to pick them for 17th place in the league. Moving on to 16th again, Wolves is a similar one. We've seen quite a few of their players leaving. Cunha, we've seen Aiden Nuri leaving, Gudus, Semedo, a few different players, Pablo Sarabia, just leaving, and then we haven't seen, them really bring much in other than Strand Larson from Celta Vigo, because he was on loan at Wolves, of course, and they've now made the deal permanent. And then we've seen them, get a few players from some foreign leagues as well. But I think, Wolves are going to be in and around that relegation battling zone this season, and I'm going to put them in at 16th place. That takes me to 15th place now, which is, of course, another one of the newly promoted boys, and it is, of course, the last of the newly promoted boys in Burnley. I think Burnley, to be honest, looking at what they've done, they've gotten Kyle Walker in on a 5 million deal from Man City. Yes, he's on the older side, but for Burnley, coming back up into the Premier League, that is a really good player to be having around that area of the table, fighting a relegation battle. He's going to be a really good player for them to have. They've also got other players there that have signed, like Max Weiss from Kaiserslautern, and then, of course, Martin Dubravka from ourselves, Newcastle, of course, and Armando Broja as well from Chelsea on an underscores fee. So they've done some decent business. We've seen them, of course, lose James Trafford as well to Man City for 31 million. But they've done some good business. They've gotten some pretty decent players in. Marcus Edwards as well from Sporting Lisbon for 8.5 million. Jaden Anthony from Bournemouth for 8 million as well. So Burnley have done some really good business. I think that'll be probably enough there for them to, be in and around that relegation battling zone, but get themselves a 15th place finish in the league. And that takes us on now to 14th place. And this is where I think, we're going to see Everton finish. Looking at what Everton's brought in, Alcaraz, Barry from Villarreal as well, Kieran Dewsbury Hall as well from coming in, and that is another one. So there's some good deals being done there by Everton, but again, they're going to be another one of them teams that are in and around that relegation battling area. But 14th place is where I'm going to put Everton. Crystal Palace, I'm putting in its 13th place. Yes, they're going to be playing Europe this season, but looking at what they've got, they haven't really signed crazy leveled players for being, a team that's going to be playing European football this season. And I think with that European football being there as well, I think that's going to cause a problem for Palace, because they haven't quite got the depth to deal with the European nights and the Premier League, the FA Cup and the League Cup all in one go. So I think that's going to cause them a little bit of trouble there. So I am going to put them in at 13th place in the league. Moving on to 12th place in the league, and I think this is where we're going to probably see Brighton. They haven't really done much, to be honest. Looking at what Brighton's done in the transfer window, there's nothing really of massive note. Maybe it's the guy from Olympiacos, Kostas, 31.4 million they've paid for him. But other than that, nothing really, that sets the world on fire, to be honest. And really shows that they're going to do some massive stuff. And then you look at what they've, let go this season or sold this season. Evan Ferguson out on loan to Roma, good player for Brighton. Simon Adringa sent him away, of course, Sunderland for 20.5 million. 60 million, of course, move for João Pedro to Chelsea as well, who was a standout player for Brighton last season in the Premier League. And that's going to be a big loss for Brighton, but that's going to still, I think, be enough what they've got to maybe see them finish in 12th place in the league. And then we'll go on to Fulham, 11th place in the league. They're usually around that same area. There's no real reasoning behind putting Fulham in at 11th place, but we'll just see Fulham really, to be honest, always around that area of the table. And I think that's going to be a similar picture once again. We'll see Fulham in and around that 10th to 11th to 12th area in the table in this season. Of course, I'm going to go with them finishing in at 11th in the league. And moving on now to 10th, heading into the top 10 of the Premier League. And that is where we see, of course, Spurs. That's where I think, we'll see Spurs going in, to be honest. Looking at what Spurs have done, obviously, we've seen that Heung-min Son is now moving away from Spurs. Looks like he's going to be going to the MLS. And, we've seen them let go of a promising youngster in Mickey Moore to Rangers on a loan, but still let him go. Højbjerg, of course, off to Marseille. Fraser Foster was released. Sergi Reguilon was released. Alfie Whiteman as well. And then a few different players. But they have done some really good signings of Mohamed Kudus coming in from West Ham. George Paulinho from Bayern Munich. Matthias Tell from Bayern Munich as well. Danso coming in from RC Lens. But I don't think that's going to be enough to see them, get themselves into them European places. Obviously, they've got Thomas Frank as their manager as well. So it's going to be a situation where, he's going to have to get himself settled in really early. And when we played them out in South Korea, they didn't look that good, to be honest, going forward. They looked very susceptible in the defence as well. When they were going forward, they were leaving themselves bare at the back, and that's not good for any team. So that, I think, is going to cost them this season that European spot, and I think they're going to finish in 10th place. That's where I'm going to be putting Tottenham this season. Nottingham Forest, however, I'm going to be putting in 9th place. They have European football, but similar to Crystal Palace, they don't quite have the depth to deal with all them games that they'll have to play this season of European football, the Premier League, the FA Cup and the League Cup. They've done some decent business, but nothing, again, that, really sets the world on fire, to be honest. And they've lost a huge player for them in Anthony Elanga to, of course, my team, Newcastle United. And he was really, really good for them last season, getting a lot of goals, a lot of assists. And he was one of the pivotal players to how they played last season. Obviously, they've still got the likes of Chris Wood there, Elliot Anderson there as well, and a few other massive players there that can do some stuff for them. But losing a player like Anthony Elanga, who has that pace, has that ability to get in, the back line, break past players at quick speeds. That's going to be a massive loss for Nottingham Forest this season, and especially when they're in Europe as well. I think they're going to be finishing 9th place in the Premier League this season. 8th place, I'm going to go with Bournemouth. No real reasoning behind it. I'm just going to put Bournemouth in at 8th place. They did pretty well last season. They've got a good manager in Areola. I think he'll be doing another good job with Bournemouth, and maybe see them get in and around them European spots come the end of the Premier League season. And that takes us on now to the top 7, and that means we are now going to have a look at 7th place, and that is Manchester United. Obviously, last season was absolutely dreadful for them. They were right the way down the table, right around the relegation zone, exactly the same as Spurs. But I think they've done some decent business. They've got a really good goal scorer coming in, of course, in Benjamin Sesko. If he hits the ground running, it could maybe be a really good player for them, but they need to get the players to work around him. They've got Matthias Cunha, of course, and Brian and Burmo, and if both of them can pull themselves together and work together, they could have a really good chance of finding themselves in and around them European spots, Man United. And I think, with the way things are, I think they might squeeze themselves into a Euro Conference League spot come the end of the season. Obviously, they've let go of a few players as well. The likes of Christian Eriksen's went on a free. Johnny Evans has went on a free. Lindelof's been released as well from the club. Rashford's out on loan at Barcelona. So I think, to be honest, we can see them maybe, if everything clicks for them, getting that 7th place and getting themselves into a Euro Conference League spot come the end of the season. That takes us on to, of course, 6th place, which is none other than Chelsea. That's where I think Chelsea's going to be finishing this season. And looking at what they've done, Chelsea's signed a lot of players. They really have. They've signed Jamie Gittins, from Dortmund. They've signed João Pedro. They've signed Liam Delap. They've signed Heto from Ajax. They've signed Stevens Williams from Palmeiras. And then they've signed Mamadou Sarr as well. They've let go of a few players, but they have brought in a lot of players. They've spent quite a lot of money in this window. And I think if it clicks for them, they could see themselves in them European spots. And that is why I am going to put them in at 6th place in the league. And that takes us on to Aston Villa. I'm going to put Aston Villa in at 5th in the league. Looking at what Aston Villa's done, got some decent signings. They've got a pretty decent manager when it comes to Premier League and cup games. Not so great for, of course, knockout football and making it to finals, however. But other than that, really good at getting his team to play in a league and getting them high in the league. Unai Emery's doing a pretty decent job with that, just not so much on the winning of cup things. I'm sure Aston Villa fans will probably agree with us on that one, but I am going to put Aston Villa in at 5th in the league. And that now takes us on to 4th in the league, and that is where I am going to put, of course, my team, Newcastle United. Now, yes, we've had a terrible pre-season. We haven't done well at all. No wins in pre-season, barring a game against Carlisle United behind closed doors. But looking at what we have signed and what we've got at the team already, obviously there's the whole situation with Alexander Isak to take under consideration here. But I still think even if Isak does move on and we do, go out and get a striker in that department, then I think, we have a very good chance of finishing 4th in the league. I mean, We've signed Anthony Elanga. We've got Aaron Ramsdale there, who's a really good goalkeeper with his feet and his hands. We've seen what he did when he was at Arsenal. And then, of course, you've got the other players in there to take under consideration of, the midfield for us, of Bruno, Sandro, Joe Linton. Then you've got Anthony Gordon in there as well, which looked like he had picked up a difficult injury, but turns out it's only a twisted ankle, by the way. For anybody that was wondering, what that situation was in the game yesterday, it is only a twisted ankle, so he won't be out for a long, long time. And other than that, we are looking really, really good. We're looking fast on the attack. We're looking, really quick with the passes. So I think putting all that together, we've got every chance of finishing, fourth in the league. Moving on, of course, to third, top three. And this is where I think we are going to see Arsenal finishing in the league. And looking at what Arsenal's done, they've brought in Kepa from Chelsea for 5 million. Martin Zubimendi, of course, has come in. Nordgaard's come in. Noni Madueke, of course, of Chelsea has come in. Mosquera of Valencia has come in as well. And Arsenal have finally gotten themselves a striker, an actual striker to play up top. And that is Gyriakos. Now, they were looking at, of course, Alexander Isak. That was never going to happen. But Victor Gyriakos has come in from Sporting Lisbon. He's going to be the striker up top for Arsenal. And if he does click in the Premier League early for them, he could be a really good signing on Arsenal's part. Now, that I think will probably be enough to see them, getting into third in the league. And that now takes us on to, of course, the top two. And, of course, it's got to be, Liverpool in second, Man City in first. And I will give you my reasons behind why I have put Liverpool in second. Liverpool, of course, have won the Premier League last season. They're defending the Premier League this season. And as history will tell you, Liverpool aren't the best when they are having to defend a trophy. You just need to look at the League Cup final from last season for that. Of course, where they were the defending champions. They got beaten by, of course, my team, Newcastle United. And then look at the Premier League when they won it under Jurgen Klopp. The next season, they didn't defend it. And I think this is going to be a similar situation. I think Arne Slot is going to be found out this season on his tactics, as most managers do. They always usually get found out in their second season in the league. They have to start adapting things and changing things to try and, get that winning mentality back. And looking at it, I really don't see them winning the league this season. I don't. A lot of people are saying that Liverpool can win the league this season. I really don't see Liverpool win the league this season. They've signed, of course, Kirkes from Bournemouth. They've signed Florian Wirtz from Bayer Leverkusen, Jeremy Frimpong from Bayer Leverkusen, Mohamed Dazashvili, of course, from Valencia, Hugo Ekitike from Eintracht Frankfurt, and, of course, Freddie Woodman coming in on a free. But they have let go of players like Trent Alexander-Arnold on a free, even though Real Madrid paid a 10 million compensation fee to Liverpool, and Callagher, of course, to Brentford on 18 million signing fee. Kwanzaa off to Leverkusen for 35 million, and then, of course, Luis Diaz to Bayern Munich for 65. Tyler Morton to Lyon. So they've gotten rid of some players, but I think they'll still have enough in the tank to get themselves into that top two. And I think, to be honest, this season it's going to be Liverpool finishing second, Man City finishing first. And the reasons I see Man City, of course, finishing first as well, other than Liverpool being found out, of course, because it is the second season under Arne Slot. I think Man City have done really, really well in the transfer window. They've gotten some really good business done. Nuri from Wolves, of course, they've signed Ryan Cherky, of course, from Lyon. They've gotten James Trafford in, who's a really good goalkeeper, knows how to play with his feet, did some fantastic stuff in the Championship last season with Burnley. And all of them factors, I really do think, Man City's got every chance of being the Premier League champions come the end of the season. Let us know your thoughts on all of that down in the comments below, where you think your team's going to finish this season, how you think I did with these predictions as well. And like I say, as always, this is just for a bit of fun. This isn't concrete. This isn't, gospel. What I say where the teams are going to finish doesn't mean that that's where the teams are going to finish. I may get a few right. I may get a few wrong. It may be like last season. I barely got any of them right. So it's not gospel at the end of the day. But anyway, hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please consider hitting that like button. It's completely free. And please consider subscribing to the channel as well. Turn on the bell for all notifications. And I'll see you all in the next one. However, lads.